Wow, I feel some spirit flowing today. And I actually have a story to tell you by the time I felt the spirit flowing. Happened a few weeks ago. I was headed in here to preach. I was all feeling good, got the spirit flowing. I'm like, yeah, this is going to be good. Walked upstairs to my office, went to print my sermon, and the internet was down. This was actually really bad because I had emailed myself the sermon from home, and I didn't have it. So, fortunately, I had come early, and so I raced home, got my little thumb drive out, got my sermon, brought it back, printed it, and it all turned out fine. This is an example of some of the problems that we have that are fairly easy to fix. And we all have problems like this, right? Flat tires, spilled coffee, burned lasagna, misplaced car keys. We've all got these little things that come up that we've got to overcome. And for the most part, we're pretty successful at life. We all go about our days navigating the difficulties in our paths. And even some of the harder things, we tend to figure those out in the end. But what happens when we reach the point in our lives when we come across something that we just can't handle? What happens when someone we care about, someone we care deeply about, is killed in a car accident? And the overwhelming grief is clenching at your insides, when it hurts so bad that the only way to deal with it is to numb yourself to the outside world. Or when you want to scream and yell and cry and hit something all at the same time. Point where you feel disconnected, alone, shut off. Where the loneliness aches inside you. Where you are in a crowded room of people who are talking, laughing, joking, smiling, and clearly having a good time, and you are miserable. Standing by yourself, no one talking to you, more alone in the crowd than you would be if you were home alone. Your stomach is clenched, your arms may be folded tightly across your chest to protect you, but somehow not protecting you at all from the shame. The shame that comes with knowing deep in your heart that no one likes you, and that no one ever has liked you, and that you are just plain unlikable. What do? What happens when you do your best? When you do all the things that you've always done to help you overcome your challenges in the past, and it doesn't work? You're stuck. You're trapped. You feel like there's no way out. Just like the stream we heard about in the children's story, we all come to the desert times in our lives. Jesus spent time in the desert, literally. Buddha, when faced with the reality of hunger, sickness, aging, and death, after only having known health and vitality all of his life, he faced the desert too. Back in December of 2009, Kevin Pierce, a champion snowboarder, faced a modern-day desert. Kevin was flying high. He had just won the World Tour Championship in 2008, and he was practicing and preparing to participate in the 2010 Winter Olympics. But all of these dreams came crashing to a halt when Kevin missed the landing on a spinning double backflip and hit his head on the pipe really hard. Kevin was in a coma for a week and suffered significant brain trauma. He had double vision, seeing two of everything at all times. He suffered short-term memory loss, and he had difficulty standing up and keeping his balance. A snowboarder with no balance. He was 22 when this happened. In the prime of his life, an elite snowboarder about to go to the Olympics and compete for a gold medal. And then, just like that, not only is that dream gone, but even the odds of learning to walk again were not good. Can you imagine what he must have been going through? I can only imagine. But I also have a more pressing question for you. When have you encountered the desert in your life? Personally, I faced several deserts. My parents' divorce was an intensely emotional experience, one that dragged out over several years. And the loss of my stepfather to cancer, when he had meant so much to me, was a big loss. And these are but two of the many deserts I've faced, and they've all had their different challenges. But there's one in particular that stands out for me, probably because of the length of time I struggled with it. For years, starting in college, I waged a profound war with myself every day just to get out of bed. It wasn't so bad at first, especially since in college I could usually get away with just sleeping in as late as I wanted. I'd be late to meetings and miss class sometimes, but usually I could just roll over and go back to sleep, and at some point the pain and fear and anxiety would melt away. After I graduated, though, and finally found a job in the real world, I couldn't just roll over and go back to sleep. I would come awake, half awake in the early morning, gripped by anxiety. My stomach would be clenched, my head would be bent, I'd be curled up, holding on to a pillow for dear life, burrowed under my blankets. And I would lie there, telling myself over and over, Seth, you have to get up. You have to get up. The vice-like grip of pain and fear wouldn't let go, though, and I couldn't do it. I would lie there, buried under the weight of fear, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. I'd be watching the clock, the minutes ticking by, getting to the point, and then passing the point where there was no way I was going to make it to work on time. And yet the fear had a strong hold. Finally, at some point, the urgent need to get to work so I wouldn't get fired would kick in, and I would get myself up and get moving. But I was often 45 minutes late to work or later. I struggled for years with this, and I was very lucky to have an understanding boss, one who cared more about that I got my work done and got it done well, rather than whether I was there from 9 to 5 or not. But each morning, each and every one of those mornings was a battle. It was painful, and I dreaded them. And for some reason, I had gotten it in my head that this was my challenge to overcome. Several friends had suggested at various points that I try going to therapy, and I would have none of it. This was my problem, and I was going to overcome it all on my own, no matter what. For a long time, I was like the stream in the story. I would throw myself at the desert, only to be sucked dry. I made some progress, perhaps, but most often, I was just feeling like I was turning into the marsh in the desert, not really getting anywhere. That is, until I received some amazing advice. Bless the friend who shared this with me, because it was advice that changed my life. She asked me, Seth, if you were going to learn to play the trumpet right now, you'd go out and get some books, right? And then you'd go home and practice. And I said, well, yeah, and I'd probably go get some lessons too. She said, oh, you'd get lessons. Why would you go get lessons? And I said, because it would go a lot faster if I had someone to help teach me. And she said, exactly. Why is it that with your anxiety that you're not going to let someone help teach you? You could do it all on your own, but why would you put yourself through that? Get someone to help you. Thank God the light bulb went off. This friend helped me to learn one of the key lessons about how to overcome these desert times. You don't have to do it alone. I finally took that advice I had been getting about starting therapy, and let me tell you, it took a long time. I wish I could say I was like the stream in the story, and that I just made a decision and let it go, and that was it. But the reality was that it was a slow, long slog. My journey to the other side went in bits and pieces, fits and starts. In therapy, we worked through some old trauma, wounds and hurt and pain that I was still living with from being teased and bullied as a child. But a little bit at a time, I was able to let myself be absorbed into the wind. And I got a boost along the way when I found a spiritual director who was able to help me move even faster. I worked hard with her on learning to love myself. Because the lesson I had carried away from all those years of teasing, it was that I was worthless. So as I worked through some of these core issues and what was probably low-grade depression, the early morning pain and anxiety gradually began to ease. And morning slowly but surely became much, much better. And perhaps I should have expected it, but I also found myself feeling more connected to my friends, and they in turn were able to help me and support me in this process. So, friends encouraging me to start therapy, my therapist, my spiritual director, and then my friends again in my church community, supporting me along the way. There were many puffs and gusts of wind on that journey that lifted me up and carried me along. It takes many puffs and many gusts to create the strong wind of love that we need to carry us through and across our desert times. And that wind, the wind that carries us through and across, it starts with us. It relies on us, in fact, to get things started, whether it be through willpower or just by trying to love yourself. But most often, the thing that really carries us through to the other side is love. The love and support that comes from our friends, family, and communities, and the love that is always available to us from God. It happens sometimes that we feel isolated from our friends and families, but even then, the unending love that pervades the universe, the source of all love which some call God, that love is always available to us, even and especially when we don't feel it. And I can promise you that while we are not anywhere near remotely on par with God, if you need us, the ministers here at All Souls are always here for you. And we do love you unconditionally. And of course, the entire All Souls community has plenty of love to share as well. This gathered community can help you with your desert times, as it has carried many others in the past. Marlon, for example, has shared often about the desert he crossed when his daughter died 5 years ago, and then also about the tremendous outpouring of love and support that he and his family experienced with this community. And many of you have crossed your own deserts, whether it be divorce, the death of a loved one, the loss of a job, or whatever form your desert has taken. And this community has been here. At All Souls, there truly is a love beyond belief. Which brings us back to Kevin Pierce. Kevin has been in the news recently because of his own journey of hard work and healing. He spent days and hours and months in rehab, learning how to walk again, learning how to regain his balance, doing exercises to strengthen and repair his vision. Just a few months ago, on December 13th, 2011, almost exactly 2 years after his accident, Kevin got back on a snowboard for the first time. And he made a solo practice run down a half pipe, even taking a few 180-degree jumps along the way. It took a lot of his own willpower and personal strength, and he didn't do it alone. His brother Adam was there with him every day. Adam even quit his job so that he could be there for every minute of what was often 8 hours of grueling therapy, physical, cognitive, and vision, every day. And in addition to Adam, Kevin's whole family was there as a support for the entire process. While he will never snowboard professionally again, Kevin can now go out and enjoy the slopes by himself and enjoy the space and freedom of being on the mountain. Kevin's journey was very public, though, and the outpouring of love and support from his friends, family, and the snowboarding community was immense. But one of the hardest things about some of our desert times is that many of them are secret, known only by a handful of closest friends, if that many. We hear the stories about people like Kevin Pierce, but we don't often hear the day-to-day stories of the people in our lives. If we're in the mental health desert, we don't usually go walking around at work or even with most of our friends telling people, "Hey, I'm clinically depressed." And afterwards, just like we don't tell people we're depressed, we don't then go around sharing about the struggle, the hard emotional and spiritual work we have done, and the people who have supported us that helped us overcome or ease these symptoms of mental illness. We also don't walk around saying to everyone we know, "Hi, my name is Stacy, and I'm unhappy with my body image. I think I'm fat." And we certainly don't walk around saying, "Hi, my name is Sarah, and I'm an anorexic." And if we have overcome our eating disorder months or years later, we don't usually walk around casually saying, "Hey, I was anorexic for 3 years, but I did some intensive therapy and group work and overcame it." We just don't share these secrets. Women have abortions and sometimes don't tell anyone, keeping the sadness, the loss, and the grief all to themselves. Men and women alike have suffered from sexual abuse as a child or have been raped, experiences that dramatically shape their continued life experience. And yet no one except perhaps their closest friends or loved ones know. 1 in 3 women and 1 in 7 men in this country will experience some form of domestic violence in their lifetimes. And yet we don't talk about it. Unfortunately, society conditions us to keep some of our most challenging deserts a secret, which prevents us from receiving the very thing that will help us through. So, one thing we can do is to name the secrets, because when we name them, it takes away some of their power, and it can diminish the shame that is attached to them. And similarly, naming our deserts to others can be a powerful step in the direction of moving through them. In fact, I lay this down as a challenge for all of us, to take the risk sometime in the upcoming weeks to find a person you trust and to name to them your desert. Name to them and share with them deserts past or a desert that you are currently facing. And I realize that in asking us to do this, that this will involve a tremendous amount of courage for many of us. And it's true. Crossing the desert takes courage. It takes courage sometimes to even face the desert head on, let alone to try and cross it. Sometimes it takes courage to even want to cross it. And sometimes we just want to give up and give in. It takes courage to change, to move forward, to leave places of pain that are safe and familiar, even if they hurt us. It takes courage to let yourself be lifted up by love, your own love, the love of your friends and family, the love of your community. And it takes courage to open yourself up to the grace of the universe and let the unending love that pervades the universe carry you forward. What do you need to let go of? What do you need to face? What old habits are you clinging to? What do you need to do to trust despite your fears? What is it that you need to do so that the winds of love can lift you up and carry you forward on your journey? Despite how hard facing the desert can be, we all face it at different times in our lives. And when we do, the winds of love are always blowing, ready to lift us up if we're ready. When the time comes for you to cross a desert, May you be the water and the leaf. May you find the courage to dance in the wind. Amen.